They say you can't love the man who destroyed your world. They say Stockholm Syndrome isn't real love, that trauma bonds break eventually, that hate and passion can't coexist in the same heart. They're wrong. I know because I lived it, because I fell in love with my father's killer, and God help me, I'd do it again. Part 1. The gunshots came at 11:47 p.m. Marco Salvatore was in his father's office, reviewing shipment manifests like he'd been doing every night since returning from Milan. His father had insisted, "You need to understand the business, even the parts I wanted to keep you from." Marco thought it was preparation for eventually taking over. He didn't know it was his father saying goodbye. The first bullet shattered the window behind him. The second hit the wall where his head had been before he dove onto the desk. Then the world exploded into chaos. Shouting, gunfire, the acrid smell of smoke. Marco stayed under that desk, heart hammering, while his father's empire burned down around him. When the shooting stopped, the silence was worse. He heard footsteps, slow, deliberate. Someone was searching the building. Marco held his breath, pressing himself against the desk's wooden panel, praying to a god he wasn't sure he believed in anymore. The office door crashed open. "Check everywhere. Salvatore had a son." The voice was deep, cold, efficient. The voice of a man who'd done this before and would do it again. Marco squeezed his eyes shut. This is how he died? Not in some accident, not peacefully in his sleep someday far in the future. He'd die at 20 years old, hunted down in his father's office by men his father had made into enemies. A hand grabbed his ankle and dragged him out from under the desk. Marco fought, throwing wild punches, but hands pinned him down. They hauled him to his feet, and he found himself face to face with a man who looked like vengeance personified. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes like ice. A scar cut through his left eyebrow. Blood spattered his expensive suit. He looked at Marco like a wolf looks at a lamb, with complete certainty about how this ends. "Marco Salvatore," the man said. Not a question. "Giovanni's son." Marco spat in his face. The man didn't even flinch. He wiped the spit away, slowly, deliberately, his expression never changing. Then he smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Marco had ever seen. "I like you already," the man said. "You've got balls. Your father died screaming. Nice to see you inherited something other than his cowardice." Rage exploded through Marco, hot and blinding. He lunged forward, but the hands holding him were iron. "Fuck you! Where is he? What did you do to him?" He gestured to the window. Marco looked. The warehouse across the courtyard was an inferno, flames reaching into the night sky like grasping fingers. And Marco knew with absolute certainty that his father was in there, that he'd never hear his voice again, never hear him say, "I'm proud of you," or "Stay clean, stay out of this life." "No." The word came out broken. "No, no, no." "Yes." The man stepped closer. "Giovanni Salvatore is dead. His organization is finished. His legacy is ash. And you're the last piece of it standing." Marco's legs gave out. The men holding him were the only thing keeping him upright. His father was dead. Everything was gone. The numbness spreading through my chest felt like drowning. "So kill me. Finish it." The man studied him for a long moment. Those ice-cold eyes traveled over Marco's face, his body, cataloging him like a possession. "No," the man said finally. "I don't think I will." Marco's head snapped up. "What?" Killing you would be a waste. You're young, beautiful, relatively innocent compared to the rest of your family. The man reached out and grabbed Marco's chin, forcing him to maintain eye contact. You're worth more to me alive. I'll never work for you. I'll die first. The man's smile widened. Who said anything about work? I'm thinking something more personal. You see, your father took someone from me once, someone I loved. I think it's only fair that I take something from him in return. And since he's dead, I'll settle for taking you. The implications hit Marco like a punch to the gut. You're insane. I'm Vincent Russo, and as of tonight, I own this city and everything in it, including you. Vincent released Marco's chin. You're exactly you one choice to make. Come with me willingly, or I'll drag you out of here in chains. Either way, you're leaving this building as my property. Marco looked at the burning warehouse, at his father's office destroyed, at the armed men surrounding them, at Vincent Russo, who looked at him like he was already owned. He had no cards to play, no leverage, no escape. How long? Marco asked, hating how defeated he sounded. How long what? How long do you keep me? Vincent's smile was cruel. Until I'm bored with you. Could be months, could be years, could be forever. He leaned in close, his breath hot against Marco's ear. But I promise you this, by the time I'm done with you, you won't remember what it felt like to hate me. Marco jerked back. Never. I'll hate you until the day I die. We'll see. Vincent straightened and gestured to his men. Bring him, and find something to cover him with. I don't want anyone seeing his face on the way out. They threw a jacket over his head, plunging him into darkness. Hands gripped his arms, guiding him forward. He heard his own footsteps echoing, heard car doors opening, felt himself being pushed into a vehicle. The engine started, they were moving. Marco pulled the jacket off his head and found himself in the back of a luxury SUV. Vincent Russo sitting across from him, watching him with those calculating eyes. Where are you taking me? Home? That's not my home. It is now. Better get used to it. The gates opened and they drove through. The driveway seemed to go on forever, winding through manicured gardens that Marco couldn't appreciate, past fountains and sculptures that meant nothing. Finally, the main house came into view, a massive mansion that screamed money and power. Marco had grown up wealthy, but this was different. This was dynasty wealth, generational wealth, the kind of money that let you buy anything, including people. The SUV stopped. Vincent got out first and gestured for Marco to follow. Inside, the house was all marble floors and expensive art. A grand staircase swept upward to the second floor. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. It was beautiful and cold and felt nothing like a home. Paolo will show you to your room, Vincent said. You'll stay there tonight. Tomorrow we'll discuss the rules. Rules? Marco's voice was sharp with anger. What rules? Vincent turned to look at him, and the expression on his face made Marco take a step back. The rules of your new life. The boundaries you don't cross. The consequences if you do. He stepped closer, invading Marco's space. You're mine now, Marco. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. I'll never accept it. We'll see. Vincent reached out and ran his thumb along Marco's cheekbone. The touch was gentle, almost tender, and that made it worse somehow. You're exhausted, traumatized. You need rest. We'll continue this conversation when you're thinking more clearly. Marco jerked back from the touch. Don't touch me like that. Like what? Like you care. Like this is something other than what it is. Vincent's smile was sad, almost regretful. What do you think this is, Marco? Revenge. A power play. You keeping me like a trophy to prove you won. Is that all you think it is? And tilted his head, studying Marco's face. Then you're not paying attention. Before Marco could ask what that meant, Vincent turned and walked away. Paolo, show him to his room. Make sure he has everything he needs. Paolo appeared at Marco's elbow. A short, stocky man with kind eyes that didn't match his profession. This way, kid.
Marco followed because he had no other choice. Up the grand staircase, down a hallway lined with more expensive art, to a door at the end. Paolo unlocked it and pushed it open. The room was huge. King-size bed, private bathroom, a sitting area with a couch and chairs. Windows that looked out over the gardens. It was nicer than Marco's room at home had been. Except for one thing. The windows are barred, Marco said flatly. Yeah. Paolo had the decency to look uncomfortable. Boss's orders. Can't have you trying to climb out or something stupid like that. Marco walked to the window, testing the bars. Solid iron. No give at all. He was really trapped here. There's clothes in the closet. Bathroom stocked with everything you need. If you want food or anything, there's a phone by the bed. Just pick it up and someone will bring you whatever you want. Except freedom. Paolo sighed. Look, kid, I know this is bad. I know you're going through hell right now. But Vincent, he's not the monster you think he is. Marco spun around. He murdered my father. He kidnapped me. He's keeping me prisoner. What else would you call him? A man who's seen too much death and doesn't know how to deal with life anymore. Paolo moved toward the door. Get some rest. Things will look different in the morning. No, they won't. Paolo paused in the doorway. Your father killed Vincent's brother. Did you know that? Marco's breath caught. What? 2 years ago. Shot Tony Russo in the street over a shipping route. Vincent loved his brother more than anything in this world. When Tony died, something in Vincent died too. You look back at him. I'm not saying that makes this right. I'm just saying there's always more to the story than you know. He left, and Marco heard the lock click from the outside. Marco stood there for a long moment, processing. His father had killed Vincent's brother. This was revenge, just like he'd thought. But it was personal revenge, the kind that came from love and loss and grief. That didn't make it right. Didn't make any of this okay. But it made Vincent human instead of a monster. And somehow that was worse. Marco moved to the bed and sat down, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. The events of the night crashed over him all at once. The gunshots, his father's death, Vincent's cold eyes, the drive here, the locked door. He was 20 years old, and his life was over. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Marco buried his face in his hands and sobbed, grieving for his father, for his freedom, for the person he had been just hours ago. He cried until there was nothing left, until he was empty and hollowed out. Then he laid down on the bed, still fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling. Sleep was impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flames, saw his father's office destroyed, saw Vincent smile when he'd called Marco his property. Around 3 a.m, Marco heard the door unlock. He sat up quickly, heart racing. Was Vincent coming to... God, he didn't even want to think about what Vincent might do. But it wasn't Vincent. It was Paolo, carrying a tray. Thought you might be hungry, he said quietly. I know you didn't eat before everything. Marco stared at the food, pasta, bread, water. His stomach was completely empty, but the thought of eating made him nauseous. I'm not hungry. You need to eat something, kid. Starving yourself won't change anything. Maybe I want to starve. Maybe that's the only control I have left. Paolo set the tray on the bedside table. Vincent will let you live. If you stop eating, he'll have the doctors force feed you. Trust me, you don't want that. The thought of being held down, of tubes being forced into my body, made Marco's skin crawl. He really is a monster. He's a man trying to keep you alive, There's a difference. Paulo moved toward the door. Eat or don't eat. Your choice. But know that your choices have consequences here. After he left, Marco stared at the food for an hour. His stomach growled, his head ached from crying. He was so tired he could barely think straight. Finally, hating himself, he picked up the fork and took a bite. The pasta was good, homemade, with rich tomato sauce and fresh basil. Marco ate mechanically, not tasting it, just fueling his body because Paula was right. He needed to stay strong if he was going to survive this. Whatever this was. Part 3. Morning came too soon. Sunlight streamed through the barred windows, and Marco woke from a fitful sleep where nightmares of flames chased him through endless hallways. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then memory crashed back, and the weight of it pressed against his chest like a physical thing. His father was dead. He was a prisoner. His life was over. The lock clicked. Marco sat up quickly, pulling the blanket around himself like armor. Vincent walked in, and Marco hated that his first thought was how good he looked. Dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, hair still damp from a shower, he looked like nothing like the blood-spattered killer from last night. He looked like a businessman, civilized, almost normal. "Good morning," Vincent said, like this was a regular day. Like Marco was a guest instead of a captive. "There's nothing good about it." Vincent smiled slightly. "You ate? That's good." "Paulo said I was force-feed me if I didn't eat. I'm not stupid." "No, you're not. You're intelligent, educated, well-mannered when you want to be. Your father did a good job with you. Don't talk about him like you knew him." "But I did know him. We were in the same circles for 15 years, Marco. I knew Giovanni Salvatore very well. Knew he was ruthless when it came to business, but soft when it came to you. Knew he sent you to Milan to keep you away from all of this fray. Knew he loved you more than anything." Marco's throat tightened. "If you knew that, how can you do this to me?" Vincent's expression darkened. "Because he killed Tony. Because he shot Tony Russo in the street and left him to die alone, and then send me pictures of the body. So yes, I know Giovanni loved you, but he didn't love my brother, and I'm supposed to just let that go?" The room fell silent. Margot stared at Vincent, seeing the pain beneath the cold exterior for the first time. This wasn't just business. This was personal. This was grief wearing the mask of revenge. "So, now what?" Marco asked quietly. "You keep me here forever? Make me pay for what my father did?" "We established some ground rules." Vincent stood and moved closer to the bed. Marco forced himself not to flinch back. "First, you don't leave this estate without me. Ever. If you try to run, I'll find you, and the punishment will be severe." "What kind of punishment?" "The kind that makes you wish I'd killed you that first night." Vincent's voice was factual, which made the threat more terrifying. "Second, you'll join me for dinner every evening. I don't care if you don't want to talk. You'll sit there and eat like a civilized human being. I'm not your pet performing tricks for meals." "No, you're not. You're the son of my enemy, living under my roof, eating my food, wearing clothes I paid for. The least you can do is share a meal with me." Vincent's eyes pinned him into place. "Third rule, you'll treat my staff with respect. They're under orders not to hurt you, but they don't have to be nice to you if you're cruel to them." Marco wanted to argue, but couldn't find the words. Everything Vincent said made a twisted kind of sense, which made him hate the man even more. "Fourth," Vincent continued, "you'll occupy yourself during the day however you want. There's a library, a gym, a pool. The estate has everything you could need. Except freedom. Except that. Yes, Vincent's smile was humorless. And the final rule is you don't harm yourself. You don't try to kill yourself. You don't starve yourself or hurt yourself in any way. If you do, I'll have you watched 24 hours a day. No privacy, no dignity. Do you understand? Marco's hands were shaking with rage. You don't get to control whether I live or die. Yes, I do. Because you're mine now, and I protect what's mine. Vincent reached out and grabbed Marco's chin, forcing eye contact.
His touch was firm, but not painful. I didn't save you from that fire just to watch you destroy yourself. You're gonna live, Marco. You're gonna survive this, and eventually, you're going to thank me for it. Never. We'll see. Vincent released them and stepped back. Get dressed. There's clothes in the closet. You'll join me for breakfast in 30 minutes. And if I refuse? Vincent's smile was almost pitying. Then I'll come back up here, dress you myself, and carry you downstairs. Your choice. But either way, you're coming to breakfast. He left before Marco could respond. Marco sat there, fury and humiliation burning through him in equal measure. This was his life now. Following Vincent's rules, eating Vincent's food, living in Vincent's house, being Vincent's property in everything but name. He wanted to refuse, wanted to stay in this room and force Vincent to make good on his threat just to prove he couldn't be controlled. But that would be childish. And more importantly, it would give Vincent an excuse to touch him again. And Marco didn't know if he could handle that without falling apart completely. So he got up and went to the closet. Inside were dozens of outfits, all in his size. Expensive brands, tailored perfectly. Vincent had prepared for this. Had known he'd take Marco, had planned for it, had bought clothes before the attack even happened. The level of premeditation made Marco's stomach turn. He chose the simplest option, black jeans and a dark blue sweater, and got dressed. Looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. He looked pale, haunted, but otherwise normal. You couldn't see the screaming chaos inside him just by looking at his face. That would have to be enough. 30 minutes later, he opened his door and found Paolo waiting. Morning, kid. Ready for breakfast? Do I have a choice? Not really, but Paolo's smile was kind. Come on, it's not so bad. Cook makes amazing pancakes. The dining room was ridiculous. A table that could seat 20. More crystal chandeliers, windows overlooking the garden. Vincent sat at the head of the table, reading a newspaper like this was a perfectly normal morning. He looked up when Marco entered. Good, you're on time. Sit. Marco sat at the opposite end of the table, as far from Vincent as possible. Vincent's lips twitched with amusement. We're not having a business meeting, Marco. Come, sit next to me. I'm fine here. That wasn't a request. They stared at each other across the length of the table. Marco saw the challenge in Vincent's eyes, the test. He was being pushed, boundaries being established. If he gave in now, it would set a precedent. But if he fought every single thing, he'd exhaust himself before the first day was over. Pick your battles, his father's voice whispered in his memory. Save your energy for the wars that matter. Marco stood and moved to the seat on Vincent's right. Good boy, Vincent murmured, and Marco wanted to throw his coffee in the man's face. The food arrived. Paolo hadn't lied about the pancakes. Also eggs, bacon, fresh fruit, orange juice. More food than two people could possibly eat. Marco picked at his plate, hyper aware of Vincent watching him. You need to eat more than that, Vincent said. You've lost weight already. I don't care. Eat. Marco stabbed the piece of pancake viciously and shoved it in his mouth. Chewed. Swallowed. The sweetness tasted like ash. They ate in silence for several minutes. Then Vincent set down his fork. Tell me about Milan. Marco looked up, suspicious. Why? Because I want to know. You spent 2 years there. What did you study? Business management and economics.
Did you enjoy it? The question was so normal, so ordinary, that Marco didn't know how to respond. What does it matter? It matters because I'm trying to have a conversation with you. Because we're going to be living in the same house for a long time, and I'd prefer we not sit in hostile silence every day. Then you shouldn't have kidnapped me. Vincent's jaw tightened. Your father's actions put us both in this position. I'm trying to make the best of a bad situation. The best situation would be you letting me go. That's not going to happen. Vincent's voice was final. So, we can either make this bearable for both of us, or we can make it hell. Your choice. Marco set down his fork. You want to know about Milan? Fine. I loved it. I loved being away from the family business, away from the blood and violence. I loved studying something normal, making friends who didn't know my last name, going to bars and parties like a regular person. I loved having a life, and you took that away from me. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry. The words shocked Marco into silence. I'm sorry that you got caught in this. I'm sorry that your father's choices led here. But I'm not sorry for what I did to him, and I won't apologize for keeping you. Then your apology means nothing? Maybe. Vincent stood. I have business to handle today. Paolo will show you around the estate. Try not to do anything stupid. He left, and Marco sat alone at that massive table surrounded by expensive food he couldn't taste, in a beautiful house that felt like a tomb. His first day as Vincent Russo's prisoner had officially begun. Part 4. The first month was the hardest. Marco tried everything to make Vincent's life hell. Refused meals until Vincent threatened a feeding tube again. Destroyed his room twice, tearing apart expensive sheets, smashing lamps, shredding clothes. Vincent replaced everything without comment and added the cost to an invisible debt Marco would apparently never be allowed to pay. He tried to escape 3 times. The first time he made it to the garden before the guards caught him. The second time he got as far as the outer wall. The third time, he actually made it over the wall and ran for 2 miles before Vincent himself found him on the road. Vincent dragged him back to the estate in silence. Marco expected violence, expected punishment, expected pain. Instead, Vincent took him to his room and locked an ankle cuff around his leg. A chain connected it to the bed frame, long enough to reach the bathroom, but nothing else. 3 days, Vincent said, his voice colder than Marco had ever heard him. 3 days you'll stay like this. No library, no gardens, no freedom. At all. Maybe then you'll understand that running is pointless. Marco yanked at the chain, fury making his vision blur. You can't do this to me. I can do whatever I want to you. Vincent crouched down to eye level. You're mine, Marco. Mine to keep, mine to punish, mine to protect. The sooner you accept that, the better your life will be. I'll never accept it. I'll fight you every day until you let me go or kill me. Something flickered in Vincent's eyes. Pain, maybe, or admiration. I know you will. That's what makes you so magnificent. He left Marco chained like an animal, and for 3 days, Marco lived in that room with nothing but his rage and grief for company. Paolo brought him food 3 times a day, and his expression was always apologetic, but he never removed the chain. By the 3rd day, Marco was going insane. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. He couldn't read, couldn't walk, couldn't do anything but sit and stare and remember everything he'd lost. When Vincent finally came to unlock him, Marco didn't fight, didn't curse. Just sat there while Vincent removed the cuff, rubbing the raw skin of his ankle. Did you learn your lesson? Vincent asked quietly. I've learned that you're a monster who gets off on controlling people. Vincent's laugh was bitter. If that's all you've learned, then you haven't been paying attention. Dinner is an hour. Try to look presentable. After that, Marco stopped trying to escape. Not because he'd given up hope, but because he realized he needed a better plan. Running blindly would never work. He needed to be smarter. So, he started paying attention.
He noticed that the guards changed shifts at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m.
that Vincent left the estate every Tuesday and Thursday for business, that the security cameras had blind spots in the north garden, that Paolo kept a spare key to the gate in his office. He was gathering intelligence, planning, waiting for the perfect moment. But something strange started happening while he waited. He started talking to Vincent at dinner, not because he wanted to, but because the silence was driving him crazy, and Vincent was the only person who treated him like a human being instead of a prisoner. They argued about everything: politics, philosophy, books, music. Vincent was well-read, sharp, and had opinions about things Marco would never have expected from a mafia boss. They debated Machiavelli's The Prince, argued about whether power justified the means, discussed Italian Renaissance art with the passionate scholars. He hated how much he enjoyed those conversations, hated that Vincent made him think, made him defend his positions, challenge him intellectually in ways his professor de Milan never had. "You're not what I expected," Marco admitted one night, 2 months into his captivity. They were in Vincent's study, surrounded by books. Vincent had invited him to choose anything he wanted to read, and Marco had found himself gravitating toward the classics. "What did you expect?" Vincent poured them both whiskey, and Marco didn't refuse. Alcohol made the edges of his reality blur, made the whole situation slightly more bearable. "A thug. Someone brutal and stupid. Someone who'd treat me like an object. And instead, you're educated, well-spoken, and you treat me like..." Marco trailed off, unsure how to finish. "Like a person?" Vincent's smile was sad. "I told you, Marco. I'm not a monster. I'm just a man who's done monstrous things." "There's a difference?" "I'd like to think so." Vincent sat down across from him, cradling his glass. "I read Dante while I'm ordering hits. I listen to Mozart while I'm planning territory wars. I look at Renaissance paintings and think about beauty while my hands are stained with blood. Does that make me more or less of a monster?" Marco stared at him, seeing Vincent clearly for the first time. This wasn't a simple man. This was someone fractured, complicated, struggling with the same questions of morality that philosophers had debated for centuries. "I don't know," Marco admitted. "I don't know what you are anymore." "Neither do I." Vincent drained his whiskey. "But I know what you are." "What's that?" "The only real thing in my life." Vincent's eyes met his own, and the intensity there made Marco's breath catch. "Everything else is blood and business and violence. But you're real. You're honest. You hate me, and you don't hide it. There's something pure about that." Marco's heart was racing. "Don't do this." "Do what?" "Pretend this is something it's not. You're my kidnapper. I'm your prisoner. That's all this can ever be." Vincent stood and crossed to him, moving slowly like he was approaching a wild animal. Marco should have backed away, should have run, but he stayed frozen in his chair, watching Vincent come closer. "Is that really all you see when you look at me? Your kidnapper? Nothing else?" Marco forced himself to hold that gaze. "What else is there?" "A man who can't stop thinking about you, who looks forward to our dinners more than anything else in his day, who lies awake at night thinking about what it would be like to touch you, to kiss you, to make you feel something other than hate." The confession hung in the air between them, dangerous and electric. Marco's voice came out shaky. "You're insane." "Probably, but that doesn't make it any less true." Vincent reached out and traced Marco's cheekbone with his thumb, the touch gentle and devastating. Marco jerked away, standing abruptly. His chair fell backwards with a crash. Don't touch me like that." "Why not?" "Because I can't. Because if you touch me like that, if you look at me like that, then this becomes something else. Something I can't process or understand or survive." Vincent's expression was raw, vulnerable in the way Marco had never seen.
What if I want it to be something else? Then you're more fucked up than I thought. Marco backed toward the door. I need to go. I need to not be here right now. Marco, no, just give me space, please. Vincent let him go, and Marco practically ran back to his room. His hands were shaking as he locked the door from the inside, a useless gesture since Vincent had a key, but it made him feel slightly more in control. He sat on his bed, trying to process what just happened. Vincent Russo, the man who'd killed his father and kidnapped him, was developing an obsession that went beyond simple possession. And the worst part, the absolutely terrifying part, was that Marco had felt something when Vincent touched him. Something that wasn't just fear or anger, something warm and electric that made his skin tingle and his pulse race. He was attracted to his captor, to his father's murderer. The realization made Marco feel sick. What kind of person developed feeling for someone who would destroy their entire life? What kind of twisted psychology was at work in his brain? Stockholm Syndrome, a clinical voice in his head supplied. You're experiencing trauma bonding. This isn't real. But it felt real. That was the problem. When Vincent looked at me with those intense eyes, when they debated philosophy over dinner, when Vincent's thumb traced my cheekbone with such careful gentleness, it all felt desperately, terrifyingly real. Marco didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what was happening to him, trying to figure out when the man he hated had become the man he couldn't stop thinking about. Part 5. Marco avoided Vincent for a week after that night in the study. He ate breakfast and lunch alone in his room, made excuses about being tired or sick to skip dinner, spent his days in the library at the far end of the estate where he knew Vincent wouldn't look for him. But on the 8th day, Vincent came home covered in blood. Marco was in the library, curled up in a window seat with a book he wasn't really reading, when he heard the commotion, shouting, running footsteps. Paolo's voice raised an alarm. Something was wrong. Marco should have stayed where he was, should have let Vincent's people handle whatever was happening. This wasn't his problem, wasn't his concern. But his feet carried him toward the noise anyway. And he found himself standing in the entrance hall, watching Paolo and 2 other men half carry Vincent through the door. Vincent's shirt was soaked with blood. His face was pale, lips pressed together in a thin line of pain. There was a knife wound in his side, deep and still bleeding. "What happened?" I demanded, moving forward without thinking. Paolo looked up surprised to see me. "Ambush. Rival family made a move. Vincent took the blade before we could..." "He needs a doctor," I interrupted without thinking. "Can't risk it. Too many questions. We have a medical kit. We'll patch him up here." "That wound needs stitches, professional stitches. If he just bandaged it, it could get infected, "I know, kid, but we don't have a choice." Vincent's eyes opened, focusing on me with effort. "Let him do it." "Boss?" Paolo looked confused. "Marco, let him patch me up." Vincent's voice was strained with pain. His father made him learn field medicine. He knows what he's doing. My heart was pounding. I should refuse, should let Vincent suffer or a wound fester, let infection take him. This is my chance, the universe handing me revenge on a silver platter. But looking at Vincent's pale face, at the blood soaking through his expensive shirt, I found myself nodding.
Get him to his room. I need the medical kit, clean water, towels, and whiskey. Lots of whiskey. They moved Vincent to his bedroom, a space Marco had never seen before. It was surprisingly simple. Large bed with dark sheets, minimal furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. Personal, but not ostentatious. They laid Vincent on the bed, and Paolo brought everything Marco had asked for. "Everyone out," Marco said. "I need space to work." Paolo hesitated. "Kid, if you're thinking about..." "I'm thinking about saving his life, not ending it. Now get out." After they left, Marco stood over Vincent, medical supplies spread out beside him. Vincent's eyes were closed, his breathing shallow.
The knife had gone in between his ribs, missing vital organs, but cutting deep into muscle. "This is going to hurt," Marco said quietly. Vincent's eyes opened. "I know." Marco cut away Vincent's shirt, exposing the wound. It was bad, worse than he thought. He cleaned it carefully, and Vincent didn't make a sound, even though Marco knew it must have been agony. "What are you helping me?" Vincent asked through gritted teeth. Marco threaded a needle, his hand steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "I don't know. Maybe because I'm an idiot. Maybe because, despite everything, I don't want you to die." "Why not? You killed my father. You took everything from me." "I know. And I hate you for that. I'll always hate you for that." "Then why?" Marco paused, meeting Vincent's eyes. "Because hate isn't the only thing I feel for you anymore. And I don't know what to do with that." Vincent's hand shot out, grabbing Marco's wrist. His grip was weak, but insistent. "Marco, don't... Let me finish this first. We can talk after." It took 45 minutes to stitch the wound closed. Marco worked with careful precision, the skills his father had insisted he learn coming back like muscle memory. When he was done, he bandaged it tightly and sat back, exhausted. Vincent was watching him with an expression Marco couldn't read. "You could have let me die." "I know. You could have made it look like an accident, nicked an artery while you were stitching. Paolo would have never known." "I know that too." Marco started cleaning up the bloody supplies, needing something to do with his hands. "But I couldn't do it. I couldn't watch you die and do nothing." "Why not?" Marco's hand stilled. "Because somewhere in the last 3 months, you stopped being just my kidnapper. You became..." He struggled for the words. "You became a person to me. Someone I argue with and laugh with and think about when I shouldn't be thinking about you. Someone who looks at me like I matter, like I'm more than just a trophy or a hostage." Vincent sat up slowly, wincing at the pain. "Come here." "Vincent, you're hurt. You should rest." "Come here." Vincent repeated, his voice rough. Marco moved closer, and Vincent reached out, pulling Marco down to sit on the edge of the bed. They were close now. Close enough that Marco could see the flecks of gold in Vincent's dark eyes, could smell his cologne mixed with blood and sweat. "I meant what I said that night in the study," Vincent said quietly. "You're the only real thing in my life. Everything else is just violence and business. But you, when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be human." Marco's throat was tight. "This is so messed up." "I know. You killed my father. I should hate you, should want you dead." "I know," Vincent repeated, "but you don't, do you?" Marco closed his eyes, unable to look at Vincent while he admitted this. "No, I don't want you dead. I want..." He broke. "I want you to touch me again. Want you to look at me the way you did that night. Want to stop fighting this thing between us even though I know it's wrong." Vincent's hand cupped his face, thumb tracing his cheekbone, just like before. "Then stop fighting." "I can't." "Yes, you can." Vincent leaned closer and Marco could feel his breath on his lips. "Let go, Marco. Just for tonight, let go of everything and let yourself feel." "If I do this, there's no going back. Everything changes." "I know, but maybe that's what we both need, for everything to change." Marco made a decision. Maybe it was the wrong one. Maybe he'd regret it in the morning. Maybe this was Stockholm Syndrome or trauma bonding or any of the other clinical terms he'd been throwing around in his head. But in that moment, with Vincent looking at him like he was something precious, with blood still on his hands for saving the life of his father's killer, Marco stopped caring about right and wrong. He closed the distance between them and kissed Vincent. Vincent made a sound, relief or surprise or desire, and kissed him back. It was gentle at first, tentative, like they were both afraid the other would pull away. But then Vincent's hand laid into Marco's hair, pulling him closer, and the kiss deepened into something desperate and hungry. Marco kissed him back with 3 months of confusion, anger, and unwanted desire.
Kissed him like he could make sense of his feelings through the press of lips and tongue. Kissed him until he forgot why he was fighting this in the first place. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent pressed his forehead against Marco's. "Stay with me tonight. Don't go back to your room. Stay here." Marco knew he should say no, should maintain boundaries, should keep some distance between them. But Vincent was looking at him with such raw vulnerability, and Marco was so tired of being alone in his locked room. And the warmth of Vincent's body next to him felt like coming home after being lost. "Okay," he whispered. "I'll stay." Part 6. They helped Vincent out of his bloody clothes and into clean pajama pants. Marco tried not to stare at Vincent's body, the scars that told stories of violence, the defined muscles, the way he moved, even injured like a predator. Vincent caught him looking and smiled. "See something you like?" "Shut up, you're wounded, don't be cocky." "I'm always cocky." But Vincent winced as he settled back against the pillows. Marco dimmed the lights and stood there awkwardly, unsure what to do now. They'd kissed. He'd agreed to stay. But what did that actually mean? "Come here," Vincent said, patting the bed beside him. "I won't bite. Much." "You're impossible." But Marco found himself moving towards the bed, climbing in carefully so he wouldn't jostle Vincent's injury. Vincent's arm came around him immediately, pulling Marco against his uninjured side. Marco tensed for a moment, then relaxed into the embrace. Vincent was warm and solid, and lying there in the dim light felt like stepping into an alternate universe where nothing makes sense, but somehow felt right anyway. "Tell me about your life before this. What did you want to be?" Marco was quiet for a long moment. "An architect. I wanted to design buildings, create spaces that made people feel something. Beauty and function combined. My father thought it was impractical, but he let me study it anyway. That suits you. You appreciate beauty. I've seen the way you look at the art in the house, the gardens. I appreciate things that are honest. Architecture doesn't lie. A building either stands or it falls. There's no deception in it." Vincent's chest rumbled with quiet laughter. "Unlike the world we come from. Unlike everything in our world." Marco tilted his head to look up at Vincent. "Do you ever wish you'd had a different life? Done something legitimate?" "Every day. But I was born into it. My father was in the life, his father before him. By the time I was old enough to understand what that meant, I was already in too deep. Blood doesn't wash, you know? Once you're stained with it, you're stained forever. Is that why you kept me away from it all? Because you know how it destroys people?"
Vincent looked at him with surprise. "How did you—" "I've been paying attention. You could have put me to work, used me in your operations, turned me into a soldier. But you didn't. You gave me the library, the gardens, freedom to exist without participating in the violence. Why?" Vincent's hand came up to stroke Marco's hair, the gesture tender. "Because you're the last innocent thing I'll ever touch. Because corrupting you would destroy the only pure thing in my life. Because..." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "And because I love you, and love means protecting, even when protection looks like a cage." Marco's breath caught. "You can't love me. You don't even really know me. I know you better than anyone. I know you're stubborn and proud and would rather suffer than show weakness. I know you read philosophy when you're upset because it helps you make sense of chaos. I know you cry in your sleep sometimes and you hide it by morning. I know you look at me sometimes like you want to kill me and sometimes like you want me to kiss you. And you hate yourself for both." Tears pricked Marco's eyes. "How do you know all that?" "Because I watch you. Because I can't stop watching you. Because every moment you exist in my house, I'm aware of you." Vincent wiped away a tear that had escaped down Marco's cheek. "Because I'm obsessed with you and I'm not sorry about it." "This is insane. Everything about this is insane." "I know. But tell me you don't feel it too. Tell me when we're like this, you don't forget why you should hate me. Tell me it's just Stockholm Syndrome and nothing more." He couldn't.
Because lying there in Vincent's arms, feeling his heartbeat under his palm, watching the way Vincent looked at him like he was something precious, it didn't feel like trauma bonding or psychological manipulation. It felt real and terrifying and inevitable. "I can't tell you that," Marco whispered, "because I'd be lying." Vincent's eyes darkened with desire. "Then stop lying to yourself about what you want." He kissed Marco again, and this time there was nothing gentle about it. This kiss was demanding, possessive, full of months of wanting. Marco kissed back just as desperately, his hands fisting in Vincent's hair, careful not to touch his injured side, but needing to hold on to him somewhere. They kissed until Marco's lips were swollen and his body was aching with need, until Vincent's hands were mapping every inch of Marco's skin they could reach, until the air between them was thick with desire and the last walls between them were crumbling. "Vincent," Marco gasped when they finally broke apart. "You shouldn't. You're hurt." "I don't care. I've wanted this too long to care about a little pain." "It's not a little pain. It's a knife wound." "Marco." Vincent's eyes locked with his. "If you want to stop, tell me now. But if you want this as much as I do, stop making excuses." Marco's heart was racing. This was the point of no return. If they did this, everything changed. He couldn't go back to just being a prisoner, couldn't pretend this was just Stockholm Syndrome, couldn't lie to himself anymore about what he felt. But looking into Vincent's eyes, seeing the raw need and vulnerability there, Marco realized he didn't want to go back, didn't want to lie, didn't want to fight this anymore. "I want this," he said quietly. "God help me, I want you." Vincent's smile was beautiful and dangerous. "Then, take off your clothes." Marco's hands shook as he pulled off his shirt, then his pants until he was naked in front of the man who destroyed his life. Vincent's eyes traveled over every inch of him, possessive and hungry, and Marco had never felt more exposed or more desired. "Beautiful," he murmured. "Even more beautiful than I imagined." "Your turn," Marco said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Let me see you." Vincent chipped it carefully and Marco helped him remove his pants. Then they were both naked, skin against skin, nothing between them but months of tension and want. Vincent pulled Marco on top of him, careful of his injury, and Marco straddled his hips. The feeling of their bodies pressed together, nothing between them, made Marco's breath catch. "Touch me," Vincent commanded, and Marco did. His hands explored Vincent's chest, tracing scars and muscles, learning the geography of the man who owned him. Vincent's hands did the same, sliding down Marco's back, gripping his hips, guiding him into a slow grind that had them both gasping. "I need..." Marco's voice was wrecked. "Vincent, I know what you need." Vincent reached for the bedside drawer, pulling out supplies. "I've been ready for this. Been imagining it every night." He slicked his fingers and reached between Marco's legs, circling his entrance. Marco tensed and Vincent paused. "Have you done this before?" Vincent asked gently. Marco shook his head, embarrassed. "No, never." Vincent's eyes softened. "Then we'll go slow. I'll take care of you." He worked Marco open with patient fingers, adding 1, then 2, then 3, all while kissing him and whispering praise. Marco had never felt anything like it. The stretch, the burn, the overwhelming fullness. It was intense and strange and surprisingly good. "Ready?" Vincent asked when Marco was rocking back on his fingers, desperate for more. "Yes, please, Vincent." Vincent positioned himself and pulled Marco down, slowly, inch by inch, until Marco was fully seated on his length. The feeling was overwhelming, too much, not enough, perfect, and painful all at once. Marco's head fell back, a broken sound escaping his throat. "Breathe," Vincent murmured, hands steadying Marco's hips. "Just breathe. Take your time." Marco did. adjusting to the impossible fullness, the stretch, the feeling of Vincent inside him. When he finally started to move, it was tentative at first, learning the rhythm, finding what felt good. "That's it," Vincent encouraged, watching Marco with dark, hungry eyes. "Take what you need. Use me." Marco did. He rode Vincent slowly at first, then faster, finding an angle that made pleasure spark through his body with every movement. Vincent's hands guided him, helped him, one hand eventually wrapping around Marco's length and stroking in time with his movements. "You're perfect," Vincent groaned. "So perfect, Marco. Mine. You're mine." "Yours," Marco gasped, beyond shame or denial. "I'm yours, Vincent." The pleasure built and built, coiling tighter in Marco's belly until he couldn't take it anymore. When he came, it was with Vincent's name on his lips, his body clenching around Vincent in waves. Vincent followed moments later, Marco's name a prayer on his tongue, spilling inside him and marking him in the most intimate way possible. Marco collapsed against Vincent's chest, careful of his injury, both of them breathing hard and trembling. Vincent wrapped his arms around him, holding him close, pressing kisses to his hair. "I love you," he said again. "I love you so much." Marco felt tears on his cheeks, overwhelmed by everything, the pleasure, the emotions, the impossible situation they were in. "I love you too," he whispered. "God help me, I love you too." They stayed like that, tangled together as their breathing slowly returned to normal. Vincent eventually cleaned them both up with a towel from the bathroom, then pulled them back into his arms. "Stay," he said. "Not just tonight, always. Stop going back to that room. Stay with me." Marco knew he should refuse, knew this changed everything, made everything more complicated, but he was tired of fighting, tired of pretending, tired of being alone. "Okay," he said simply, "I'll stay." Part 7. The next morning, Marco woke up in Vincent's arms. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and for a moment he felt peaceful. Then reality crashed back, and he remembered everything. The sex, the confessions, the surrender. He'd slept with Vincent, had given himself to the man who killed his father. The guilt was immediate and crushing. Vincent stirred beside him, eyes opening slowly. When he saw Marco awake, he smiled. "Morning?" "Morning?" Marco managed his voice tight. "What's wrong?" "What's wrong?" Marco sat up, pulling the sheet around himself. "What's wrong is that I just slept with my father's murderer. What's wrong is that I told you I loved you. What's wrong is that I don't know who I am anymore." Vincent sat up carefully, wincing at his injury. "Marco, no, don't try to rationalize this." Marco's hands were shaking. "My father's been dead for 3 months. 3 months, and I'm already in bed with the man who killed him. What does that make me?" "It makes you human." Vincent reached for him, but Marco pulled away. "It makes you someone trying to survive an impossible situation."
Or it makes me weak, a traitor, someone who betrayed everything my father stood for. Your father loved you, Vincent said firmly. He would want you to survive, to find happiness wherever you could, even here. Marco laughed bitterly. You didn't know him well enough to say that. Maybe not, but I know you, and I know that torturing yourself over this won't change anything. What happened last night happened. You can't take it back. I know that. Marco's voice broke. That's what makes it so much worse. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Do you regret it? Marco wanted to say yes, wanted to lie and say it was a mistake, that he'd been confused or manipulated or temporarily insane. But looking at Vincent, at the vulnerability in his eyes, Marco couldn't do it. No, he admitted quietly. I don't regret it, and I hate myself for that. Vincent moved closer, slower this time, giving Marco a chance to pull away. When he didn't, Vincent cupped his face gently. Then don't hate yourself. Don't torture yourself over feelings you can't control. Your father's death isn't your fault. Your feelings for me aren't a betrayal. They're just what is. And maybe that has to be enough. Tears spilled down Marco's cheeks. How do you make everything sound so simple? Because from where I'm standing, it is simple. I love you, you love me, everything else is just noise. It's not noise, it's an entire history. It's blood and death and none of it changes how I feel about you. None of it changes that you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Marco wanted to argue, wanted to push Vincent away and run back to his room and pretend last night never happened. But he was so tired of fighting, so tired of being angry and scared and alone. So, instead, he kissed Vincent back. They spent the day together. Vincent worked from his room and Marco read beside him, and it felt almost normal. Paolo brought the meals, and if he noticed Marco wearing Vincent's clothes and sitting on Vincent's bed, he didn't comment. By evening, Marco's guilt had faded to a dull ache in his chest. Something he could live with, something that would always be there, but didn't have to consume him. I told you something, Marco said as they ate dinner together. He said you've been consolidating the Salvatore territories, taking over everything my father built. Vincent set down his fork. Yes. Why? You already won. My father's dead. The war is over. Because nature abhors a vacuum. If I didn't take control, someone else would have, and they might not have been as considerate about your position. Marco understood. Vincent had protected him by taking everything, had made sure no rival family could use Marco as a pawn or a hostage or worse. Thank you, Marco said quietly. Vincent looked surprised. For what? For protecting me, even from other monsters in your world. You're not a pawn in this, Marco. You're... Vincent paused, searching for words. You're the reason I get up in the morning. The reason I come home. The only good thing in a life full of blood and violence. Of blood and death. Of course I'd protect you. Marco's chest tightened with emotion. What happens now? Do I just stay here forever? Your secret? Your pet? You're not my pet. Vincent's voice was sharp. You're my partner, my equal. And yes, I want you to stay, but not as a prisoner, as someone who chooses to be here. I don't have anywhere else to go. You do. Vincent pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. There's a bank account in your name, $5 million, and a passport. If you want to leave, you can, right now, tonight. I won't stop you. Marco stared at the envelope, shocked. You'd let me go? I'd hate it. It would destroy me. But, yes, I'd let you go. Because I don't want you here out of fear or obligation. I want you here because you choose me. Because despite everything, you love me enough to stay. Marco's hands shook as he picked up the envelope. Inside was exactly what Vincent promised. A bank statement showing millions of dollars in his name and a passport with his photo. This was freedom. Real freedom. He could leave tonight, start over somewhere far away, build a new life without Vincent or the Mafia or any of this twisted history. But looking at Vincent, seeing the fear and hope warring in his expression, Marco realized something. He didn't want to leave. Somewhere in the last 3 months, Vincent had become home, had become the person Marco thought about first in the morning and last at night, had become necessary in the way that had nothing to do with Stockholm Syndrome or trauma bonding. He loved him, really, truly loved him, and that was terrifying and beautiful and completely insane. I'm staying, Marco said, setting the envelope aside. Not because I have to, because I want to. Vincent's expression crumpled with relief. Are you sure? I'm not sure of anything anymore, but I know I don't want to be anywhere you're not. So yes, I'm staying. Vincent stood and pulled Marco into his arms, holding him like he was something precious. "Thank you," he whispered against Marco's hair. "Thank you for choosing me." Marco held him back just as tightly. "But promise me something. Anything. Promise me we'll be honest. No more secrets. No more games. If this is real, if we're really doing this, then it has to be real. All of it." Vincent pulled back to look him in the eye. "I promise. No more secrets." They sealed the promise with a kiss, and Marco felt something settled in his chest. This was his life now. Loving a man who destroyed his world. Building something new from the ashes of everything he'd lost. It wasn't what he'd planned. It wasn't what he'd dreamed of in Milan. But somehow, impossibly, it was enough. 1 year later, the garden was Marco's idea. He'd wanted to create something beautiful, something that grew instead of died. Vincent had given him free rein over a section of the estate, and Marco had spent months designing and planting, getting his hands dirty in a way that felt therapeutic. Now, a year after that terrible night, the garden was blooming. Roses and jasmine and a dozen other flowers Marco had chosen filled the space with color and fragrance. Vincent found him there in the early evening, kneeling in the dirt as he planted new bulbs for spring. "You're going to ruin those plants," Vincent said, amused. Marco looked up and smiled. "Then buy me new ones. You got the money." "Fair point." Vincent sat on the bench nearby, watching Marco work. "Paolo came to me today. He said the last of your father's loyalists have agreed to terms. It's done. We've fully absorbed everything." Marco's hands stilled in the dirt. "Everything?" "Everything. Your father's empire is officially part of the Russo family operations now." Marco sat back on his heels, processing. His father's life's work, everything he'd built, now belonged to the man who'd killed him. It should have hurt, should have made Marco angry, but all he felt was tired relief that it was finally over. "How do you feel about that?" Vincent asked carefully. "I don't know. Maybe sad, but also free. Like this is finally the end of something. Like I can stop looking over my shoulder waiting for the other shoe to drop." Vincent moved to kneel beside him in the dirt, expensive suit be damned. "You know you don't have to be involved in any of this, right? I meant what I said. You're not part of the business. You're separate from it all." "I know," Marcus turned to look at him. "But I've been thinking, maybe I don't want to be completely separate anymore." Vincent's expression turned wary. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I want to help. Not with the violence or the criminal side, but with the legitimate businesses. The restaurants, the real estate, the investments. I studied business, Vincent. I'm good at it, and I'm tired of feeling useless." Then, since it was quiet for a long moment, "Are you sure? Once you're involved, even in the legitimate side, you can't go back. You become part of this world officially." "I became part of this world the night you took me." Marco's voice was steady. "I'm just choosing now what role I play in it, and I'd rather be your partner in all things than just the person you keep safe and separate." Vincent studied his face, searching for doubt. "If this is what you really want, it is. Then okay, we'll start slowly. You can review the real estate portfolio, maybe help with some of the restaurant expansions. See how it feels." Marcus smiled and kissed him. "Thank you."
They stayed in the garden until the stars came out, and Marco felt something shift inside him. For the first time since his father's death, he wasn't just surviving, he was living, building something new, creating a future that was his own choice. That night, as they lay in bed together, Vincent pulled Marco close. "I never thought I'd be happy," Vincent said quietly. "Not really happy. Not after Tony died. But you make me happy. You make everything worth it."
Marco pressed a kiss to Vincent's chest, right over his heart. You make me happy too. Is that wrong? Is it sick that the man who destroyed my life also made it worth living? I don't know. Maybe. But I don't care. Vincent tilted Marco's face up to look at him. I love you. That's the only thing that matters to me. I love you too. I said it easily now, without the guilt and shame that I'd colored it in the beginning. I love you and I choose you, and I don't care what anyone thinks about that. Vincent kissed him slow and deep and full of promise. They made love that night with a tenderness that still surprised Marco sometimes. Vincent touched him like he was precious, like he was loved, like he was chosen. And he was. They both were. Afterwards, lying tangled together in the darkness, Marco thought about the journey that had brought him here. The night of fire and blood, the months of captivity and rage, the slow, terrifying realization that hate and love could coexist, the choice to stay, the choice to love. It wasn't a fairy tale. There was no redemption arc, no moment where everything was magically okay. Vincent had still killed his father. Marco still sometimes woke up from nightmares of flames. The world they lived in was still violent and dangerous. But they had each other, and somehow, impossibly, that was enough. What are you thinking about? Vincent asked, running his fingers through Marco's hair. How we got here. How wrong this should be. How right it feels anyway. Do you ever regret it? Staying? Marco thought about the envelope Vincent had given him, still tucked away in the drawer somewhere. The passport and bank account that represented freedom. The choice he made every day to stay. No, I don't regret it. This is my life now. You're my life now. And I'm choosing it. Every single day I choose you. Vincent's arms tightened around him. I choose you too. Every day. For the rest of my life. They fell asleep like that. Two broken people who'd somehow found wholeness in each other. A mafia boss and his enemy son. A captor and his captives. Two men who loved each other despite everything. Maybe because of everything. Their story wasn't beautiful. It was dark and twisted and born from violence. But it was theirs. And that made it perfect. The end.
Appreciate you watching. Hit subscribe, like, and share. See you in the next story.